right?
Yes, sir.
And I have a question for you that I had a discussion with my son, our monthly argument, our monthly basketball argument about LeBron James. I mean, we don't want to get into too much about this. I want to ask you a specific question, though, about the argument that happens all the time. Okay. Me and Aiden got into our monthly LeBron, Jordan, and I even threw out there, I told him I would put Kobe ahead of him. Like, we got into this big thing, which kind of like, we yelled at each other. It kind of was out in the driveway. Our neighbor comes out. I'm like, at least we're not yelling at each other about, we're talking about basketball. But anyway, my whole thing with this is like, he says to me, he says, LeBron James is the greatest basketball player that ever lived. I say, I put him number 3. He's like, how do you put him number 3? I could see Jordan, but how do you not put him over Kobe? Now, I said to him, he says, this is a terrible take, my take that I'm about to give, okay? We're getting to a point in the greatest of all time debates. Let's just use basketball, all right? We're getting into a debate, a greatest of all time debate with stats, okay? So everybody pulls out when they want to talk about the greatest player of all time, they talk about the stats. Well, he has this, well, he has that. Okay, fine. You want to talk about stats, that's one thing. So I said to Aiden the other night, I said, if you want to call LeBron James the best and greatest basketball player that ever lived, he has to lead. He has to be the leader in at least every single relevant category in the history of basketball if you want to call him the best basketball player that ever lived. And he says that's a crazy take. I said, no, it's not a crazy take because he's the best center. He's the best this. He's just the best basketball player, and he exceeds everybody else's statistics, okay? And I said, if he has that, then yes, and you could tell me he's the best, greatest basketball player of all time. I think you don't put him up there because he could have all the stats in the world, but he doesn't have intangibles, okay? Now, in the intangibles, I mean comparisons of like the other night. I don't know why, but when he said the other night that it's just basketball, it ate to my core. And yes, I don't like him. So, and that's Aiden what says to me is like, you're starting off this conversation by you don't like LeBron anyway. And he's absolutely right. I just don't like him. But when he said the other night that it's just basketball, that shows his fans that he's just saying, guys, it's just a basketball game. But a lot of his fans don't look at it like that. And then they compare it to the Allen Iverson. It's just practice. You don't know the story behind the Allen Iverson. It's just practice thing. LeBron James, to me, is a person who's super talented. He's athletically better than anybody that we've seen in years. He's got the points. He's got this. He's got that. He doesn't have killer instinct. He doesn't like basketball, and I don't think he's a good person. I don't think if you want to give the ball to Kobe, Jordan, or LeBron, I would give it to either one of those two guys and probably about 20 people before LeBron. Now, he says to me that my argument doesn't make any sense because I think that when you're talking about the greatest players of all time, they need to have other intangibles like drive, wanting to play 82 games a year and kicking people's asses in the playoffs, wanting to win a championship, not for you, wanting to win a championship for your teammates, making your whole team, making somebody a Hall of Famer, not somebody making you a Hall of Famer. You know what I mean? Like that Bulls team, Scottie Pippen's a Hall of Famer because of Michael Jordan. And that was so obvious because he didn't have that killer instinct. Great basketball player. But you know, I thought maybe Scottie Pippen's mentality was like LeBron James. Now, I get this shit from these kids who try, it's a big thing now. It's like the old heads against the young kids. It's a different game now. I think now comparatively, my neighbor says to me the other day is the greatest football player that ever lived is Tom Brady. The best football player that ever lived, you could probably say is Lawrence Taylor, or you can say one of these guys. Now, Brady's the greatest because he's won championships. He's brought his team back from deficits. He's done all those tangibles. He's the maniac yelling at everybody. He loves the game of football. LeBron James, athletically, statistically, sure, you could call him the greatest of all time. But you know what, though? There's certain things that he doesn't have that the greatest of all time has. Now, do you think my take on that is a dumb take, or do you think that it's something that could be discussed?
Yeah, I'm not big on that, Rich, on the greatest of all time arguments. They'll be around forever, and nobody ever wins these arguments either. So, but I was just, when you were saying something just now, something just clicked in my mind. So, I know people say I'm biased and stuff, but I want to talk about the Yankees. So look at these guys: Derek Jeter, Jorge Posada, Mario Rivera, and Andy Pettitte, right? And Bernie Williams to an extent. So these guys had the drive. Right? They won the championships. They're not the greatest of all time, but they are the prototypical athlete that you want. They had heart. They had drive. They wanted to win for their team, and they did win for their team. They won rings. So a lot of these guys just like the paycheck, Rich. They like to play for, like LeBron. Do you think he has the drive to win the championships? They went quietly in the night, Rich. You know, they didn't even put up a fight with Denver in the playoffs. Nope. Right? I mean, Anthony Davis played well. But
whoa. I'm sorry. Just pause for 3 seconds. I want to say something about Anthony Davis. The guy took a night off during the playoffs. I'm sorry. Right. Keep going. I want to talk. He took a night off during the playoffs. He wasn't injured.
Yep.
I'm crazy. Sorry. Go ahead. That's
crazy. No, I'm just saying. And look what happened to the Lakers coach, Ham. He's fired, right? They got rid of him. Yep. Right? So, you know, did they think they were going to win the Lakers? I mean, you know what, Rich? And when you're talking about the Lakers, they won that in-season tournament. I think they took that more seriously than winning going for the actual ring. They won the in-season tournament. What good is the in-season tournament? You know, the Indiana Pacers were and look at the Pacers. The Pacers are still in the playoffs, but the Pacers have to drive. And I want to talk about the Pacers and Knicks because, you know, we have this rivalry revisited. Getting back to your thing, Rich, it's hard to really talk about that, the arguments and stuff like that. But you have to look like Tom Brady. Yeah, he might be one of the greatest, but it's a different era, a different type of football. Back then, there were less teams, less players. Now there's more teams, more. You know, whenever these arguments go, it's hard to compare. You could say that Babe Ruth was the best player ever, but you put Babe Ruth in today's baseball, is he the best? No, Babe Ruth might be a Steve Balboni. I don't know if you remember Steve, but that's what it is, Rich. It's hard to make the comparisons nowadays, and to put LeBron James as the best basketball player ever, I think. You can't because these guys had the drives in the 80s and 90s, the 60s and 70s. I mean, these guys were playing every day. Like I said, Dennis Rodman would play 42 minutes. What would he do after the game? He'd be on the treadmill running and stuff like that after the game, after playing 48 minutes, whatever, the full game, not coming out, you know? And I look at these guys. I look at Tyrese Maxey and I look at Jalen Brunson. They played their hearts out, Rich, in this series. And you know what? People might say Joel Embiid is soft, but let me tell you something about Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid had Bell's palsy. Now, people don't realize what Bell's palsy is. Bell's palsy is like a little stroke of the face where your face, it's not the most comfortable thing in the world. My dad had Bell's palsy, and, you know, it wasn't comfortable sleeping. Your eye wouldn't close. You had so he was diagnosed during the playoff series, and the guy comes out. He's got no gas left in his tank. Even in the overtime the other night, Rich, he was like a walking statue for 4 quarters. He comes out in the overtime and starts blocking shots. So, I mean, all kidding aside, Joel Embiid gave 110% in that playoff series.
Yeah, he did. But he did, Eric. But he bothered me with his complaining and being a big baby and kind of like he should have been suspended. He should have had that flag. He should have been suspended for what he did to Mitchell Robinson. He should have been. He should have gotten a flagrant for that, and he didn't.
Exactly.
I mean, this is stuff that, look, I understand. Like the guys, I'm not saying I'm not taking anything away from him, but he's a perfect example of back to what we're talking about. You know, we're going to go into the NBA now, but I want to tell you like what I meant by the greatest. We could have the conversation. You could have conversations about the greatest, and no one's really right. But if you want to compare stats, then the stats are concrete. But that's what my point is. You could look at stats and have a concrete best player of all time, but there's intangibles that are involved because there's so many people that have the stats that I think you have to bring intangibles in when you're talking about these guys that are just the greatest at their sport. Like, I'll tell you right now, I think Derek Jeter was not the greatest shortstop of all time. But I'll tell you right now, you got to talk about him in the top 3 just because of his presence. And that's what I mean. I mean that. And when people say, oh, Derek Jeter's not the greatest, but you have to talk about his presence on the field when you talk about the greatest players of all time, or even like the greatest scientists of all time, or the greatest presidents of all time. Like Joe Biden is going to go down as the worst president in the history because he is. You look at what he's doing. You could compare stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like the greatest has to have intangibles. The best, you could see numbers. So that's what my point is with Aiden. But that's why I think that my greatest conversation kind of holds water, because I'm not saying Michael Jordan is the greatest of all time. That's my opinion because of how he was statistically. I mean, guy, 6 championships, 6 playoff. I mean, that speaks for itself. Those are like he has intangible things over LeBron. That's what makes him better. And they're very close in all the stats. Plus, LeBron played 400 more games than him.
Right.
So that's what I mean, Eric, is like you have to talk about intangibles.
And you know, also, Rich, you could look at Mariano Rivera. People say Mariano Rivera is the best reliever of all time. And look, he's got the numbers to prove it. In the playoffs, too, when the money was on the line, he was lights out, gave up a couple of home runs. We can name the home runs he gave up. That's how good he was. But on the flip side, Goose Gossage comes out and says, oh, well, we used to pitch 3 innings to get saved. So what he does is just 3 outs. So he's not the greatest of all time. So like I said, it's different eras, Rich. These guys aren't playing 40, 45 minutes a game in an NBA game. Granted, in the playoffs, a lot of these teams are going 7 deep, 8 deep. They're not going their full roster, which should be in the playoffs, But still, I mean, it's hard to make these comparisons, though.
But you just
you're right. You need the guy with the heart.
Yeah.
You need the guy with the ring.
You just mentioned the guy that they say is the greatest reliever of all time. And he is the greatest reliever of all time because of what you just said. Mm-hmm. It wasn't statistically like, again, A-Rod. A lot of A-Rod's home runs, if you look him up, he hit home runs when they were losing 8-0 or whatever. I'm just saying. Mariano Rivera came in big spots. And when you saw Mariano Rivera, when he gave up that home run, you were like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Because you knew he was going to strike the side out and win the World Series or a playoff game or even a big game in Boston in the middle of August. Mm-hmm. He was going to come in and strike out the side. And when he didn't, you're like, holy shit. Michael Jordan has missed his fair share of shots. Okay. Yep. You're like, that's going in. Oh my God, he missed that shot. That's what I mean when you have the greatest conversation.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, exactly. Like we said, Rivera was lights out in the playoffs, but Goose Gossage is a big deal. We went out there every day and pitched 3 innings to get the save. So, there's always going to be critics. There's really no right or wrong answer on this, but it's good. It creates conversation between dads and sons. It's good because, we saw the old players play and the kids nowadays haven't seen those players, our kids didn't see Michael Jordan play. Right. So.
No, absolutely. And on that stupid vintage baseball Facebook page, I like to get into with these idiots sometimes because they set up who's the best setup man of all time, and they were naming guys, and a lot of the guys that are my age, I saw that answer there. So I said Mariano Rivera, and these young guys, Mariano Rivera was a closer. He's your best. It's dude, go back. He set up for Wetland. Okay, so that's when you say he set up for Wetland, then he became the greatest closer of all time. These guys are, look those, whatever, dude.
Yeah, don't forget, he was a starting pitcher, Mariano. He started as a starting pitcher, and he was going to get traded because Steinbrenner didn't like him. But look what happened. So, his history, if you go back and watch this stuff, I think it'll be better for the next generation because we don't have that many videos of this stuff. It's grainy video and stuff now as the, technology. So if you're watching stuff now where the grandkids will say, Dad, who's the best? Well, then you can watch the videos, because this is what's going on now. But, LeBron might be playing with his son next year. So we'll see about that, right? And LeBron might be coming to the Philadelphia 76ers, too. I think he's done with the Lakers. So I don't know what LeBron's doing, but I know he wants to get those extra years. So the funny thing is LeBron James, will wherever team LeBron James goes to, will that team take a draft pick, waste a draft pick on his son so he could play the 1 year with his son, right?
Like I said, it sounds like a good idea, but you know what they're saying about this kid, which is fine, that he's kind of a quiet kid, dude. They're saying that he's staying another year in college because of the fact that he's not. I wouldn't maybe immature, maybe. The kid's got all the talent in the world, but I guess he's not his dad. So I guess the people are really kind of trying to find that out. The kid likes to stay home and video games, you never see. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but. At this point, this kid is supposed to be one of the greatest high school players to come out since his father. Mm-hmm. And then, it's but you have these little things, these intangibles too. Maybe he will be better than his dad. But I think people look at that as he's quiet, he doesn't have a big personality. If he's that, you should be hearing about him all the time. No. So maybe, I don't know. I really hope the kid does well and he gets,
we've seen father-son greatness. Yeah. We've seen Ken Griffey Jr., Griffey Sr., and then on the flip side, we saw Yogi Berra, Dale Berra, and we saw Pete Rose and Pete Rose Jr. So 100%. That didn't work out well. It'll be interesting to see what they do with LeBron and Bronny. Don't forget, Bronny had the cardiac arrest scare. Exactly. So maybe, so that's that kind of delayed him this year and stuff. So maybe it does.
Some people, if you read, they're saying it was anxiety.
Yeah, it could be. You never know. Trying to live in your dad's footsteps, right?
Right. Yeah. Right. Because could you imagine that? Right now, you're being talked about as one of the top high school athletes in the country right now, and your dad is LeBron James. Yeah. So it's kind of that's got to be tough for that kid, man. It really does. I got a better scenario. So Bronny, where's Bronny going? UCLA, USC? Where is he going? I think it's UCLA. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. So LeBron James never went to college. So how about LeBron James goes to college and he's got the eligibility to play on the college team? How about that?
I like that. I like that a lot, actually. get his degree with his son.
I mean,
have
you,
his
you
son
see
stay
it.
4
You
years.
see it every once in a while, Rich. You'll watch a college football game, and they'll show like a guy in his 30s. He never went to college, but he's on the college football team. He's in his 30s. You see it.
I never even thought about that, dude. That is wow. That's not a that'll never in a million years happen. But I like that idea.
Okay, Rich,
really
you got to make this a snip for those short takes that you do. You like this idea that I have.
Yes, I am absolutely going to put that out there. Eric,
seriously, in all seriousness, if you haven't gone to college, you're eligible to play your 4 years. If you go, no matter what age you go to college.
Explain again, because I'm going to clip this.
Okay, so here we go. So how about this scenario? Bronny goes to whatever college he's going to, USC, UCLA. And then LeBron James decides to go to college, and he never went to college, so he has that 4-year eligibility. And how about LeBron James plays college basketball?
I love that idea, but never going to happen. But I do love that idea. It'll kind of like, maybe it'll bring back the college game a little more. Maybe these kids won't be in and out. Maybe,
amazing
college records. You know what's funny is like Tiki Barber brought up a good point the other day. Like Ron Dane is still the leading rusher in college football. Now, now he said the reasoning behind that is because nobody stays 4 years anymore.
True. Nobody.
In basketball, like all these college records are never going to be broken. But you know what, though? Say Bronny wants to get his degree. You know what I mean? He stays for 4 years. Maybe he does break all those records. He obviously doesn't need the money. His dad's got trust funds set up like crazy. So Eric, I like that, dude. I didn't even think about that. I like that a lot, man. I really do.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. Who knows if it comes